about CFOs, they think all we're doing is cutting costs and managing money. And what we're really doing a lot of times is just trying to figure out how to take our company's time, money, effort, energy, and get it into the right places. Dave talked a lot about strategic planning and things, and it reminded me of when we start out, we have our company's vision and mission. Do most of our companies here have a vision and a mission? Raise your hands of what we're going to, sure. And then after that, we have a strategic plan, and we're going to try and figure out how to execute that, correct? And then do many of you do a SWOT analysis? We know what that is. And I think it's interesting, because that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And some of us sometimes look the other way. We call it a TOWS analysis, T-O-W-S. And we look at threats, weaknesses, and then the opportunities and strengths. Because a lot of times we start focusing on the strengths and opportunities, and we forget that the threats and the weaknesses also need to be covered. So I've seen it called a SWOT analysis, and sometimes turned around and called a TOWS analysis. But after we get through all that, the vision, the mission, and the strategic plan, then we come down to marketing. If we could throw that next slide up here. And how many of you have seen this before? Well, I've got sales, I've got a new product or service, I introduce it, it starts growing, and now I get to it's maturing, and it's declining. Well, what am I going to do? Maybe it's declining for different reasons. Maybe there's something in the marketplace. And we saw this with things like, look at Blockbuster Video, okay? And then it started going down, and the next thing you know, they started closing up their stores. They didn't have an action plan when companies like Redbox came along to put it on the corner, or Netflix came along, or other companies started streaming it. So they didn't really become futuristic. And that's an overall way we want to look at things. They weren't futuristic. They didn't start thinking. And a lot of times what ends up happening, I believe, is companies don't take the time to sit and ponder where they are and where they're going and to think. They just barge ahead. Maybe we're really busy doing what we're doing, and sometimes thinking and pondering and generating ideas from our board or from our senior managers can really help us try to figure out where we are and where we're going to try to minimize this. And maybe throw that next slide up there. And this is what we want to do. We want to start re-innovating and getting into a new growth cycle. Sometimes one of the best things to do, I don't know, do any of you ever have meetings where you ask people to come in and bring in their top 3 things we think can grow revenue, or top 3 things we think are threats to our company? Do we do that? Or are people maybe afraid to bring that in? Do we sometimes have like a VP of marketing, or a manager of marketing, or a COO that works for us, and maybe they don't want to bring this stuff in? They're a number 2 person. I remember there was a skit on Saturday Night Live one time, and the person was number 2 in the company, and all they did was agree with their boss. No matter what happened, they'd be in a meeting, their boss would say, well, I have a new idea, we're going to expand in this area. And they said, boss, that's a great idea, I agree 100%. And then the boss would say, I think we're going to take this product line, we've been in Florida, we're not going to go to Georgia, I think there's a better opportunity in North Carolina. And they say, you know what, I was thinking the same thing, that's an awesome idea, let's go to North Carolina. And no matter what the boss said, they agree with them. And at some point in time, what can happen is this can come back to bite you if you don't have senior people, or even down into the ranks, that can get their ideas up to help you. Now, growing our revenue, you've seen, we're going to show the growth matrix now, and there's 4 areas in there. And I got a few notes, I'm a little old school, but market penetration, basically we're selling our current products or services to our current customers. Market development, our current products or services to new customers. Product development, new products or services to our current customers, and then diversification, where we're going to go out and try to sell a new product or service to a new customer that we don't have. Often, number 1 is start with your current customers and your current products or services. We want to keep that. That's our core of where we are. We don't want to lose that. How many of you keep regular communications with your customers via newsletter, email, social media? All 3, or all 3? And why do you do all 3? Oh, you're eating something.
Sorry. Basically, just firing on kind of all cylinders, so we make personal contact, we may make a phone call, we may put an announcement out on Facebook or share something, or send it through a newsletter or specific. So an e-blast might be for us a new product that we're introducing. A newsletter is something that shows multiple products that we have and different ideas for the use of the product and that type of thing.
And maybe too, sometimes it could be based on the age group of who you're communicating to, or the gender, or the types of geographic location they're in. Some people respond better to actually having a physical newsletter they pick up at your office. Others like checking email. Some people love social media. So a lot of times it ends up understanding what your users want. And if you have varied users of your product or service, then using all three tends to potentially be good.
Newsletters are electronic.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of physical newsletters unless you have like say a medical practice. Like one of my clients was Nightlight Pediatrics, and so if people are stopping by the office and they need something to do while they're waiting on the doctor, so a newsletter talks about neat things happening in the practice that spotlight awards they may have received, or a new office that's opening or stuff like that can be good. So if you have a business where people tend to be sitting in your office waiting, then a newsletter can be good there. But yeah, most of the time now they tend to be email or people using social media. How about encouraging referrals from customers as we move into the market development? Do any of us have referral programs where there's some type of a discount or benefit or a gift card or something if you encourage a new customer? What do you do, Chris?
Well, I wouldn't directly do with what I do in the bank, but on the retail side of the bank, you probably see this kind of stuff. There's promotions where if they refer a friend to open a new account or apply for a credit card, they're getting some kind of a benefit. It's like gift cards or prizes of some sort.
In market development, again, being proactive, and I think before you try to figure out what you're going to do to grow your market, it's important to look at what the cost benefit is. I had one friend of mine, and he has a young company he's doing on the side while he does his regular job, but it's in the health and fitness area, and it's marketing toward triathletes or endurance athletes. So he decided a couple of routes. He'd advertise in Triathlon magazine. He'd set up booths at major triathlon events. And what has ended up happening over the first year of this effort is it cost a lot of money to advertise in the Triathlon magazine with a very low return, because it's just out there for people to look at. A lot of people are reading it, but there's no personal contact. And then what he found out was when he's setting up a booth at the triathlons, he's interacting with people, he's showing the products in person, he's developing a personal relationship with them. He developed a lot more clients that way, and the bang for the buck was much, much greater. Now, he maybe didn't think about that ahead of time or survey what other people had done, and so a lot of money that he spent in one area had very, very little return, and probably would have been better off not even spending it. But so those are the types of things we want to do when we're looking at market penetration and market development, moving into new areas. Product development is really interesting. A lot of times we may have certain products that we're selling, and then we have something new that we can sell to our same customers. They already are loyal, they already like us, they already trust us. Do any of you have customers and then you've added new products that have really increased your sales because of, what did you do, Mac?
Well, we're a scenery company, but now we also sell and install lighting to go with our sets. So it was a 30% increase in revenue, and we get about 75% of the projects, and we also do lighting.
Very, very good. I think a lot of times you'll see this, you'll see it in the retail restaurant area. You'll see ads come out for Applebee's or Outback or whatever. Here's our new quarterly drink specials or quarterly food specials. So what you did, you moved into an area that was very compatible, very easy to add. And I know one of my friends, he's a former Outback manager of a location. He managed several locations for over 15 years. And he said one thing they didn't always do was they didn't think of what happens down where the boots are on the ground. And he said, we're selling Outback specials and Alice Springs chicken, if you've been to Outback, and Drover's platter, and about 5 items that make up 80% of our sales. And every quarter they're coming in with 10 new drinks and 10 new items we need to teach everybody in the kitchen to make, and we add all these up, it's selling a couple percent of our sales, and we're having to work really, really hard to be ready for this. So what I can say is if you're adding a new product or service, think about, I think Dave talked about it, what it's going to cost in terms of the infrastructure to implement this, and then is it really, really worth it? Or do we maybe stumble? We're trying to implement it, it doesn't go smoothly, and it can maybe damage our brand a little bit compared to what we want to do. The fourth area, diversification, this is probably the toughest one because we're figuring out, okay, we've grown our company, we've sold new products to our current customers, we've added new customers through referrals. Maybe we want to try to figure out another area we can go into. And many companies don't really have the wherewithal or the money to do this. I think two of them we see it the most often is advertising on TV, and that's auto dealers and personal injury attorneys. They advertise a lot if you watch television, and they're able to get out, here's our new car, here's our new hybrid, here's our new SUV. Or with personal injury attorneys, there's always a new reason to sue somebody, whether it's asbestos, now it's nursing home abuse, did you take this pill and it caused a side effect? So they're able to get the message out to the general public and maybe diversify a little bit what they're doing, where it's much harder for, have any of your companies tried to diversify into a completely new area and found it worked or it didn't work, or is this? Well, maybe that's good, because a lot of times it's very difficult to accomplish. One of the overarching reasons we're trying to grow our revenue and expand it is to spread the risks, that we are not concentrated in a couple of clients. Do any of you have a business where maybe like 25 or 30% of your sales is to just one customer?
So that'll happen in a given year based on projects that we do.
Based on projects you
Based
do.
on the size
So,
of the project.
but you're on a project base. But if you don't have that big project, it can obviously hurt. You have to downsize your staff, downsize your marketing. But because of the kind of business you have, when it's project oriented, that's probably the way it normally would end up being, I guess, in most years.
It is.
So that's I know one time I knew a friend, and they had a hosiery mill up in North Carolina back in the 80s, back before a lot of that started going away, and 70% of their sales were socks to Nike. So if that went away, boom, the business was in trouble. So I guess one reason we're trying to increase our product sales, increase our sales to new customers, is to spread out this risk. When I was at Florida Eye Clinic and Laser Center, I was a CFO. We did some of these things. It's a good example because we had patients, we saw them for eye care, and then it made perfect sense to have optical shops to sell them additional products, to sell them glasses. When we brought them in for glasses, it made sense to offer a package where you could get scratch coat and tint for a certain price, whatever, $25 each, but $35 if you get both. And then we looked at what the pros and cons were of actually making the glasses ourselves and establishing our own glasses lab. We did that. We bought the equipment, and that was really good. We saved a lot of money not having to farm it out. We saved a lot of time. And then whenever some customer or some patient came in and they were a recurring patient and they had a real problem, my glasses broke, I don't have a backup pair, I need them today, we could do it. And so we generated a lot of value from that, and then our patients were able to tell other people, man, at Florida Eye Clinic, well, my glasses broke, and they were able to do me a pair that day. And it was really nice. So we looked at a lot of different things to build a positive feeling amongst our customers that way. And we're going to get into a small group exercise now. I sort of went through this a little quick, but what we're going to do is we're going to go through a small group exercise, and we're going to have questions where we're going to rate our company and how we are doing. And it's going to be in the areas of market penetration, market development, product development, and diversification. We'll rate our companies from 5 to 1. We'll talk a little bit in our small groups, and then we'll reconvene and share with the group some thoughts that hopefully can help all of us to do better at this. It seemed like we had a lot of spirited discussion, and I hope all of you found some things that maybe were helpful, and some areas where you had some opportunities to increase. Maybe if each group could maybe tell us a little bit about what they thought were some of the areas that they were really strong in and weak. Like we'll call you Group Glenn over here. That's going to be Group Chris, and Group Dave, Group Rick. So in your group, what did you find were areas where everybody seemed to be pretty strong, and maybe why, or something you can share with the group that's good?
It's really market development. I think in market development, everybody was pretty happy about their progress, and I think that's the better side. Unique items. That you come to, I don't know if someone has something that was maybe unique that somebody had brought up, but it seems like that's where everyone was concentrated in doing their best job.
I know Mac talked about how in his industry there are about several hundred potential clients, 800, but there's only about 6 or 10 companies that does what he does, and there's 5 things that can be done for these clients, and his company does 3 of them. And so he's got a really good relationship with a company that does the 4th, and a growing relationship with one that does the 5th. So that way, if those other companies get a new client, they think of Mac to provide those other 3 services that they don't provide. So again, that's so I use an example too. I was talking with their group of a friend of mine who was a photographer, and he was set up. He was out in Arizona, and there was a photographer, a florist, a baker, and a stationery and a greeting card place, all in the same little area, and they were able to market to weddings, bar mitzvahs, confirmations, graduations. They were able to, if you came into one of their locations, say, well, I tell you what, if you use all 4 of us, you're going to get a group discount. And so all of them got increased sales, and it was nice that they were all in one spot. How about Group Chris? I see a lot of good, market penetration amongst your current clients, and pretty good about market development, growing. Anything that came out of it that maybe you want to share with the group?
I thought it was interesting just that the diversification, the last 3, 11, 12, and 13 were the ones where our group scored themselves the lowest. And as we were just talking about some of those points, one of the last things that Patty just brought up was we were talking about the difficulty with, it was her business, and then I think Shelby's business as well, because there's a technical aspect to what they do, and sometimes the information that they need to gather from their customers, it takes a lot of back and forth to get the right information. And what Patty was sharing is a great idea. It kind of falls under maybe number 12, I guess, here, is offering, I think you said monthly, you do these demos or webinars, basically?
I hold class with my customers every quarter, and once a month we have an email that goes out that's strictly educational on the technical build of the file.
That's great. So I think, it builds value with the customer, right? It builds goodwill with them, but at the same time, it's good for you because it's hopefully stopping as much of that back and forth with them.
No, I think that's good. I know even like from Doug's company, from Fringe Benefits, I'll get a newsletter, and it'll tell me about things that are going on. And a lot of times, if you're just building that brand awareness or building the fact that, wow, these people care about me. I'm a client, or I'm a potential client, and they're providing information, they're offering demos, they're telling me about services. And a lot of times doing it via the email and the social media is a cost-effective way of doing it when you're trying to diversify or add new clients or add new lines of business. You get a lot of bang for the buck, which we talked about earlier, and you don't make those mistakes maybe with like a big advertising campaign. Very few companies can do that to build bang for the buck. How about Group Rick?
We have obviously some very successful companies in our group, and even with the best of companies, I think there's a recognition that when it came to market penetration, market development, there's always ways that we can tweak what we're doing to do them better. Guys has been a star of the show from the, I guess it was from the product development standpoint. They're developing new areas in their companies, diversifying and doing very, very well. But again, even best of companies can find ways to improve.
Right. And I know you have some general contractors. A lot of times it's harder for them to come up with a diversification. But in those areas, it could be geographic diversification. It could be diversification in terms of different, types of, maybe there's condominiums, maybe there's mixed-use facilities. There's so many different things. But again, if you get out of your sweet spot, then you could be out of your sweet spot to the bad side. So there. Obviously, those are the things we talked about before. You take the plunge, being extremely proactive and doing the SWOT or doing the TOES analysis, looking at the threats and the weaknesses before we get into that. We talked in the beginning about just overarching qualities, and I want to talk about that now. You see up here, Kimosabi, and it has a lot of different translations, but one of the most common ones is trusted friend. And I think what we want to be, whether it's to a client or to a customer or to somebody we might meet, is if they look at us as their trusted friend, they look at us as their somebody they can trust and they can count on, then they're much more likely to stay with us. They're much more likely to recommend our services or our products, and they're much more likely to try our new products or services. If we're diversifying, it's the same thing. When you see an ad on TV, and it's for a company or a product or service you don't use, somehow they're building up a trust or a friendship or something good, a good quality in your mind, where even though you don't use them, you're seeing them as a Kimosabi. And we're going to run a little video here, and I think all the poker players in the audience may like this one. I forgot about the Zuckerman quote. Obviously, he started Facebook, and he's a young man, and you can see what he says: nothing influences people more than a recommendation from a trusted friend. And that's what we all want to strive for in what we do. And Jeff, maybe run this a little video here, and I think Mac and Glenn will like this especially. Yeah, there it is.
Great trusted friends of this brand. Phil, help us.
Here we have mezcal, which is even better than tequila because you get to mix more with agave plants in it.
The beverage itself evokes the spirit among people, a camaraderie, fellowship, good humor. That's why we call it trusted friend.
To you, Jim Walsh, to trusted friends, and to Kimosabi Mezcal.
Thanks, Phil. Show trusted friends.
Cheers.
Here and everywhere.
I'm sure he did it after a little technical difficulty. But anyway, I found that was, I found that, you might want to take it off now, it's going to other poker videos. But I thought it was interesting because Kimosabi Mezcal, and it's trusted friend, and it's a new mezcal tequila, and they're harping on that, and they're using one of the most well-known poker players to build brand awareness. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I've watched some poker shows on TV and just happened to see that and thought it would segue in real well. But anyway, I think, I hope everybody found out some exciting things and enjoyed this. And remember, over and above, to be a trusted friend to your clients, customers, and potential customers. Okay?